His decision to strip one adversary of his security clearance set off an uproar, but President Trump might not be through. Good evening, Jim Sciutto here sitting in for Anderson tonight, and we begin with breaking news. Just a day later, a day after the president revoked former CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance and ordered the review of 9 others, the Washington Post reporting tonight he may soon be taking more action. Here is their lead tonight. President Trump has told advisors he is eager to strip more security clearances as part of an escalating attack against foes who have criticized him or played a role in the probe of alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election. This, says the Washington Post, according to 2 White House officials. The Post's Josh Dawsey, who shares the byline, he joins me now by telephone. So, Josh, tell me what you're learning tonight.
Jim, what we're learning is that the president is not done, according to a number of advisors close to him, and is still actively seeking to strip clearances from officials that he thinks have wronged him or have been at the heart of a Russia investigation. You saw Sarah Sanders at the podium yesterday recited a list of officials who he would like to strip clearances from or is considering it, and it seems that the president is determined to make that happen.
So the list that Sarah Sanders read from the podium 2 days ago, or yesterday rather, included James Clapper, former director of national intelligence, James Comey, of course, the FBI director Trump fired, Andrew McCabe, frequent target of the president's attacks. To your knowledge, is it people who were on that list who are next in line, or could it expand beyond that?
That is our knowledge, and what we're sensing is that folks inside the White House are trying to analyze each of these cases to discern if we were stripping the person of a clearance, what rationale and what reasoning will we have. Yesterday, you saw Sarah Sanders go to the podium and tick off offenses in her mind that Mr. Brennan committed. She said erratic conduct and wild outbursts. But then the president, in a pretty remarkable Wall Street Journal interview later in the day, said he linked it explicitly to the Russia investigation. He said it was a sham. He said that these people led it, so I think it's something that had to be done. It was kind of a textbook case of his advisors looking for a way to explain his actions that maybe was less deleterious than the way he is doing it, and he eventually just said what he wanted to do anyway. Yeah. And that's kind of what's happening here with these other officials, from what we can sense. Folks like Don McGahn and senior White House officials are looking at these names and saying, some of these folks have been contentious players in the probe. Have they done anything where it would be, meritorious to take away their clearance? But that's not what is motivating the president by all accounts.
Now, we should note, again, as we did yesterday, that normally clearances are taken away if people misuse classified information, etc. But as you're saying, Josh, here, the president himself contradicted the justification given yesterday from the White House podium that this has anything to do with that. The president himself told the Wall Street Journal that this is about folks who were involved in the Russia investigation, which, again, we should be clear, does not just include questions of collusion, but a fact, says the intelligence community, that Russia interfered in the election.
Right, and what the president said, he linked the two directly. And to be clear, most lawyers in Washington say, at least that we've spoken to today, that he has a right to take security clearances away. Rudy Giuliani told me this afternoon in a phone interview, no one has a right to top secret info. And what Giuliani was saying is that a lot of these former officials, according to him and the president, are using this to try to get contracts, to try to make money. These are people the president's obviously not going to call on for advice, because he has visceral disdain for most of these officials that he wants to take clearances from. That said, I talked to Mark Zaid, who's a longtime national security lawyer in Washington, really wise about clearances, and he said, we can't think of any other president who has weighed in directly and wanted to take clearances from people he dislikes. And how much further will he go? Well, everyone who goes on television who's a national security official, anyone who writes an op-ed, anyone who, shows any sort of repudiation for the president, well, they lose their clearance too, because he doesn't like it. So I think you have some real concern among national security watchers and critics of the president. You also saw today, the retired Navy admiral who led the raid of Osama bin Laden said, "Mr. President, I would consider it an honor if you would revoke my security clearance as well, so I could add my name to the list of men and women who've spoken up against your presidency."
Well, we'll see.
Which was a pretty striking comment, Mike.
We'll see if the president takes him up on that. Josh Dawsey, thanks very much for your reporting.